Hey everybody, this is Joe Kent. I'm the America First congressional candidate running for Congress in Washington State's 3rd Congressional District. I'll be on KSOK. I hope you guys can tune in and listen to the great conversation we're going to have about my district and about law enforcement and all the challenges that we're facing and how together we're going to overcome those challenges. If you want more information about my campaign, please go to joekentforcongress.com. Hope you'll tune in.
My name is Joe Kent. I'm an America First Republican running against Congresswoman Butler. Congresswoman Butler voted for the impeachment of President Trump with the Democrats. The Pacific Northwest has always been my home. I grew up camping and hiking throughout the Cascade Mountain Range and exploring the Columbia River Valley Gorge and Boy Scouts. I was fascinated by the outdoors. Inspired by the Rangers from the famous Black Hawk Down incident in 1993 in Mogadishu, I enlisted in the Army at age 18 and earned my way into Ranger Regiment and eventually Special Forces. When our nation was attacked on 9/11, I was exactly where I wanted to be, defending my country. Throughout 11 combat deployments, I saw the failures of the government establishment, keeping us at war in the Middle East. I became an America First Republican after watching our government lie about regime change wars and ship our economy overseas. In the midst of continual combat, I met and married my soulmate, Shannon Kent, a fellow warrior and special operator. Shannon blessed me with 2 sons and a loving family life. I plan to continue to serve our nation abroad, fighting our enemies overseas, until the 16th of January, 2019, when Shannon was killed fighting ISIS in Manbij, Syria. I was devastated. I left my job in the intelligence community and returned home to the Pacific Northwest. But peace wasn't in store for us. Shortly after we returned home, I watched Portland and Seattle devolve into nightly riots and lawlessness, once beautiful cities destroyed by the left's quest for power. I wanted to do something to stop the downward spiral that our society was heading. In 20 years of fighting on the battlefields and through my wife's death, I know what it's like to be on the receiving end of failed policy. The events of 2020, including the lockdowns, riots, and a presidential election manipulated by a cabal of technocrats and bureaucrats, followed by a sham impeachment that our Congresswoman voted for, made it clear to me that I had to go forward and fight once more. I've never been someone who can ask others to go and fight for me. That's why I'm asking to go fight for you in Congress, just like I did throughout my 11 combat deployments. I view this fight in Congress as a continuation of the oath that I took 23 years ago. I'm here to support and defend the Constitution and to fight for my fellow Americans. The entire time I was fighting overseas, I lived by the motto, if not me, then who? If not when, but now. Send me. Together, we can elect someone to replace Congresswoman Butler who won't betray our values.
Welcome, Joe.
Thanks so much for having me on.
I appreciate you coming on. And you may not know, I grew up in Brush Prairie, Washington, graduated from Prairie High School. And so the area that you are running in is near and dear to my heart. And I have lived in the Portland area since 2009. And actually, I've been looking to move back out to Brush Prairie Battleground area. But I have some concerns, especially around law enforcement and skyrocketing crime. That has held me back. And that's coming from someone that lives in the Portland area. That's held me back from moving back out there. So, that speaks volumes. So I want to dive into that a little bit today. But you are a very remarkable individual. And actually, my father, who is a constituent of yours, works out at the same gym you do. And he is a huge fan. And he's the reason that I have you on here today. But I have to say, he said when you were on Tucker Carlson that you made Tucker look like he was in training.
And my last question to you, not to increase the level of bitterness here, but there are a lot of people responsible for the debacle that we're seeing now for the deaths of those 13 Marines, the Navy corpsmen, today. And you wonder if any of them will ever be held accountable for what they did.
They will be held accountable. We are going to take the House and the Senate back in 2022, and we are going to hold a full inquiry on all of our wars, starting with this incident, starting with this botched withdrawal, and essentially working our way backwards. We know that we've been lied to about Afghanistan for years now. The Afghan papers that came out last year that the media ran coverage for, that all started to expose the lies. We know Iraq was based on lies. There will be accountability when we take our country back, and that's why I'm running for Congress, to take this nation back.
Man, we are rooting for you. Joe Kent of Washington State. Thanks so much.
So major kudos to you. Nothing negative about Tucker. We all love Tucker.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And please thank your dad for me. That's a high compliment.
I will, absolutely. So, because I know that you are 100% about representing the people, and actually, quote unquote here, I will always represent the will of the people. That is incredibly important. And my platform is We the People. For me, it's not about what somebody can do for me concerning like their platform or how many followers they have. It's all about the message. And so it's really cool to hear someone in your position feel so strongly about representing the will of the people. So that said, I do have a few questions, 2 or 3, that are from constituents in your area that you will be running in, that you are running in. So I'm going to dive right in. So this one does come from my dad. And he says here, and this is a good question. Not a lot of people know this. Does a member of Congress have any independent power, or does everything he or she accomplishes depend on the agreement of others?
I think members of Congress do have a good deal of individual, I would say it's more of influence. Congressional inquiries, you have the power to start on your own on behalf of your constituents, especially if constituent services. So you have the ability as a member of Congress to really lean on varying departments that affect your constituents. Veteran affairs, near and dear to my heart, is a place that I could exert some influence over. Pretty much any federal agency, they're accountable to Congress. And so as a member of Congress, I have a good deal of influence. If I'm going to actually affect change and pass legislation, then that's done, via consensus. At the end of the day, I'm one of 435. We have to have a majority, and then we have to have a president who will sign off on those bills. But yeah, to answer the question, members of Congress do have authority, especially as it pertains to representing their citizens, their constituents, back to the federal government.
Excellent. I appreciate that very much. It's always something where, we just don't know what we don't know. And that's something that my 73-year-old well-informed father wasn't 100% sure of. So thank you for addressing that. The other piece is here, he wants to know, what do you want to accomplish in your district, and how does that fit into the big picture?
Yeah, so there's a good deal that I want to get done. Initially, I like to break it down into really 2 different categories, because right now I feel that the American people are not being represented well by either party, both Republicans and Democrats. Republicans, like the woman I'm running against, Jamie Hura Butler, they've gotten us to this point. Republicans have won more elections than they've lost since 1970. And look at the state that's got us in. We don't control any of the major institutions of culture, of the media, of the government. The list just goes on and on. So Republicans, if we're going to continue to elect them, and I believe that we should, I'm running as a Republican, they need to be willing to fight. So when we take back the House and take back the Senate, like I believe we're going to, we have to show bold leadership that we're going to fight. The first thing in Washington state that I'm going to fight against from the federal level is these draconian mask and vaccine mandates. They're unconstitutional, they're immoral, and if we're going to elect Republicans, Republicans have to go fight. Jamie Hura Butler, she's taking money from Big Pharma, she's taking money from Johnson & Johnson. She's been silent on the mandates that have hurt so many people in Washington, in our district, state workers, private companies that have had these crazy vaccine mandates. So day one, I'm going to present legislation that says these unconstitutional vaccine mandates and mask mandates are just that. They're unconstitutional and they can't be enforced. Now, I know Biden's probably not going to sign off on that, but that's a forcing function, because I want to be able to, for everyone to see what lawmakers sign that and what lawmakers failed to sign it. I've already used the power of my platform to really sound off and get up in the face of Jay Inslee, the Board of Health. We had a protest just the other week against the Board of Health's draconian vaccine mandates, forced quarantine policy they were discussing, and absolute insane stuff. We're having another one today to strengthen the resolve of the Clark County Council to hopefully they'll adhere to the petition that was gathered to make Clark County essentially a sanctuary from vaccine and mask mandates. Other than that, I want to go and fight off everything the Biden administration is doing. So we can't negotiate with people that are only hell-bent on getting power, and that's what the Democrats are doing right now. So no more negotiating on their agenda. There was 13 Republicans that signed off on to Build Back Better. The only reason Build Back Better was killed off was because of the one Democrat, Joe Manchin. That's just unacceptable. So their agenda stops right dead in its tracks. And I also am dead serious about day one. We submit impeachment papers for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Joe Biden has met the high crimes and misdemeanors standard between what he's done on the southern border, leaving troops on the battlefield, leaving Americans on the battlefield in Afghanistan. that meets the criteria. Kamala Harris cheerled on the Antifa and BLM riots of 2020. She tried to fundraise for them. She encouraged them to continue while she was a sitting U.S. senator. So I want to get rid of them. And then in 2024, I have a lot that I want to get to, but it's the America First agenda. It's bringing back our manufacturing, ending this crazy onslaught of legal and illegal immigration, and staying out of foreign entanglements.
Amen to all of it. And actually, I watched the when you were, I believe you were in Olympia, when they basically killed the subject of those where we would have to go to camps. I mean, I know that that's not what they're saying, COVID camps, right? That has been something, I'm glad you bring that up, because that has been something that has been extremely concerning. I have family in Washington State. As you know, I'm just over the Columbia River, and they are terrified of that, of basically you can just be hauled off into a COVID camp without any discretion of your own. I mean, so that was so awesome. What was it, like 7,000 people submitted that they wanted to talk on the subject, and what is it, a minute each person? And apparently that was so much, it overwhelmed the amount of time that would have been needed, and so they just completely killed off the topic. I know I'm not using proper jargon, but can you talk to us a little bit about what all went into that? If you were a part of gathering those 7,000 people.
Yeah.
What can you tell us?
I would encourage everybody that's listening to this that thinks this sounds crazy to look up Washington State Administrative Code WAC 246-100-040 and 070. It will blow your mind that this is on the books. There is a Washington State Administrative Code, which isn't a law. However, take a look at how Jay Inslee governs, Kate Brown, how they govern, how Joe Biden governs. They're doing this is all based off of not legislation. They're doing it all based off of really just overstepping their rights. And so we have these administrative codes that give the health department the sole authority to task law enforcement to force people into quarantine and to establish quarantine facilities, either old hotels, or they can go put trailers on empty lots and establish quarantine. Now, a lot of the people that were backpedaling in the Board of Health said, well, no, we weren't talking about COVID. We were talking about, and they rattled off a bunch of different diseases here and there. And so for me, my point was, hey, number one, why do we even have these administrative codes? I haven't seen anything lately out of the state or the federal government that wants me to give up more power to them. So that trust is eroded. And so for me, again, why were they putting that on the docket for discussion? So we heard about a little bit after Christmas that they were going to do this. We did our research to make sure this was actually legitimate, because there was a lot of people that were, spreading some rumors that they were going to come start rounding people up tomorrow. And they weren't. That wasn't what they were discussing. But they were discussing how these administrative codes would be implemented. So they've said that we were spreading disinformation. We have the receipts. This is what they were going to do. So they did something very cowardice. They said that because of the pandemic, they were going to hold this Board of Health meeting via Zoom. And then if you wanted to make a comment, maybe they'd hear from you on Zoom. And so what we did was we said, hey, we have the right, we always have the right as free Americans to redress our grievances in person. So if you guys are going to hide at Zoom, we're coming to your front door.
We're going to lose a ton of healthcare professionals. They're going to walk away. They were tired before. They were absolutely exhausted before this hit. Then COVID hit. They're done.
And for some, it's as simple as not wanting to have the decision taken away from them.
I'm hearing many employees saying, I am looking for different jobs. I am going to leave, because it's just the governor is not going to tell me what I'm going to do after I already spent all these months forming a decision.
So we had a peaceful and patriotic rally out in front of the health department. And the great thing is the health department had this Zoom scheduled for like 9 in the morning. And then they said it wasn't going to end until 3. So we had over 250 patriots show up in person for over 6 hours. We had people that got out there at like 8 in the morning to set up our equipment and started rallying on all the different intersections around the Board of Health. And then people that stayed until like 3:30 or 4. And so by 9 o'clock, when they kicked off the meeting, we were out front. We had 7,000 other patriots because we had just been sending the links out. I can't take sole credit for any of this because there were so many groups that were doing it. But we had so many people that showed up digitally and in person that they started to backpedal, and they said, whoa, we're not going to discuss any of this. They still started discussing, and they're still in the process of discussing, making the COVID vaccine mandatory for kids that are going to school K through 12 as part of your child's shot records to show up to public and private schools. So that's something to watch. We'll plan more rallies in the future as we see those things come up. But yeah, they accuse us of spreading disinformation. And so check out those administrative codes and prepare to be terrified by what your government is planning behind closed doors.
Right. Thank you for shedding light on that. And seriously, the school piece is something that is so huge for me. I have school age children.
Yeah,
Right
me
now
too.
I'm homeschooling because I just don't see it plausible sending them to school right now. But it's so wild to me that that can even apply to a private school. And when I said I was looking to move back to Brush Prairie Battleground area, these are the types of things. I mean, this along with the skyrocketing crime rates, it's like such a deterrent. And again, that's coming from an Oregonian. So it's just so wild that Washington is so radicalized. And what's so sad is the area that you're in, the district that you're running for, it's so different than the Seattle area, which I feel like, just like Portland, like they are dictating the entire state. So
Yeah.
I'm so glad that Southwest Washington has somebody like you to truly represent who lives out there. And for the most part, that's very patriotic Americans. And so thank you for what you're doing, because it has directly impacted me and my family members. And a lot of people are scared to death that they're going to end up in one of these camps. So thank you for you. And I know, like you said, many others are involved in that, but it's so critical that we get boots on ground.
Absolutely.
All right, Joe, I want to transition over. One, I saw that you're an Army Ranger. I kind of feel like once an Army Ranger, it's always in you. I dated an Army Ranger. They are crazy.
They're crazy in a good way, right?
In a good way. It's fun. I mean, it's definitely, it was a good 4-year run, Let's see here. Okay, so I wanted to dive into the second constituent that you have that emailed me. Now, this person is a law enforcement officer in Clark County, Washington. He wants to remain anonymous, understandably, right? But he was so excited. He happened to email me, and he was giving me really his thoughts on why the crime is just skyrocketing around Clark County. And with that, when I mentioned that I was going to be having you on the show, I was like, that's the perfect time for me to do something with this information you've provided me. So he was really pumped to hear that I'd be able to present it to you. Obviously, he put together a beautiful long email. I'm only pulling bullet points out so we can have some discussion on it. But here's where he starts. He basically said to say that crime has increased is a gross understatement, right? So he's saying police reform is hindering law enforcement officers' ability to prevent and fight crime and hold responsible parties accountable. And I know something that you're big on is holding people accountable for their actions. On that, before I go to you for thoughts, I want to add. So he is saying, and this is really where you come in, the new changes in state legislation under the guise, of reform, it basically empowers criminals, right? So law enforcement officer, they can't detain criminals without a higher level of proof or evidence that the suspect committed the crime. If they can't detain them, how are they supposed to put together, this extra evidence or proof that a crime was committed? How are you going to fix this? How did this even pass in the first place?
Yeah, so Olympia is out of control. The laws that are passed there between Jay Inslee and then the Democrat-ran legislature, they passed this set of what they call police reform, but it's essentially defunding the police, except for we still pay for the police, except for we pay to have their hands tied behind their back. These poor law enforcement officers are out there, they're risking their lives, but they can't protect the communities. They're essentially reactionary. If you really get in, you read the laws, you'll quickly see that the police, their ability to go out and be proactive and protect life, it's almost completely taken away from the community and from the police officer. So basically, you're calling the cops and hoping they show up and file a police report. That's not the cops' fault. So really, what I can do from the federal perspective, everybody really needs to lean heavily on their state legislatures, and we have good representation down here in the 3rd Congressional District. All the different Republicans that are down here, they're fighting this tooth and nail, but those guys are heroes because they're up against some absolute insane people from Olympia. What I would like to do from the federal perspective is this is a place where we could use the power of the purse strings that Congress has. I want to deprive people like Jay Inslee, like Ted Wheeler, like Kate Brown. If basically all these failed Democrat-ran sanctuary cities that refuse to enforce any law and order, and they have a spread out effect. If you just take a look at our district, like, Brush Prairie Battleground, Vancouver. We are basically a suburb in many ways of Portland. I mean, to our north isn't much better. We have Seattle and Olympia, and we're caught in the middle. So the lawlessness that stemmed from those cities, it directly affects us. And so what I want to do, these sanctuary cities that refuse to enforce law and order, fine, that's their prerogative as sovereign cities, but it's also my prerogative from the federal government to give them any law enforcement grants. I want to cut those off. And for sheriff's departments, sheriffs are amazing. They are constitutionally directed. They're elected by the American people, by the people of their district. They're the only elected law enforcement officials out there. So sheriffs that are willing to stand up for their people and enforce the Constitution, enforce the law, I want to take those law enforcement grants and I want to give them to those sheriff's departments. Like we have Sheriff Atkins, he's a great guy. He stood up for he stood up for the people of the district. He deserves that grant money because he's actually trying to enforce the law. But then we also need a lot of people to get out there and get informed about what these local statutes are doing. Because unfortunately, I can't change. If I'm elected to federal Congress, I can't change those laws. I also want to use the power of the Department of Justice, and we can probably get into this more later, to make sure that the FBI is actually going after Antifa and BLM and all this lawlessness, because these guys, they cross state lines, they meet the threshold of organized crime, of domestic terrorists. They've done horrible things to our country, and I want federal law enforcement to start going after them. So that's some of the things I can do. And then also, again, the power of the bully pulpit that you have as a congressman, that needs to be exercised. Again, Jamie Herrera Butler, who, you know, I'm running against, who's supposed to be a Republican. I mean, she said nothing as Antifa burned down our district until it was time to vote with the Democrats to stop Trump from deploying the guard to actually start quelling some of the violence. She's pretending that she cares about law and order now that it's, you know, now that it's an election year, but we need to back up, especially the sheriff's departments. I can't say enough about that. So power of the purse strings for right now, but then calling attention to it too. I think there should be daily press conferences essentially talking about how pretty much every Democrat sanctuary city right now is failing, in a very, very sense of the word. The city is physically dying, the business is leaving, crime is thriving. So we need to turn the people's attention to that.
I love that. And yeah, and Jamie Herrera Butler, she is a rhino. And for those who still don't know what a rhino is, Republican in name only. They are a fraud. And so, yes, I'm so glad that we have someone like you, because again, I plan on moving back out to that area. So, but I'm not doing it until someone like you is in charge. Okay. So I love that. I want to touch on something else that he said. And you're probably already aware of this. This number just blows my mind. He's saying that there are about 400 stolen vehicles in Vancouver, Washington a month. Property crimes have skyrocketed, stolen vehicles. The catalytic converter theft in Vancouver is almost up there with Portland. The public is ill-informed and basically unaware of how dangerous the streets in Vancouver, Washington really are. He also goes into the court system, which, and I don't know if you know this, my husband is a Portland police officer, so I am well aware of what a loser district attorney, what kind of impact they can have on a city. Anytime someone brings crime up to me, I am like, their district attorney is trash, and that's what's happening. So this individual is saying the same thing. Court system, judges, soft on crime. They basically just slap people on the wrist. The prosecuting attorneys, they're dropping gun charges. They're pleading down from violent crime, dropping all charges in some cases. And this is a common trend. The officers around Clark County are asking themselves, why are we doing this? Why do this? And I'll tell you, the same conversations are happening across Portland police officers and in the Portland area. Like you said, there is proactive policing is dead. It's dead in the Northwest. And that's because in Washington, especially, their hands are completely tied. In Portland, you're hung out to dry, right? God forbid you do anything wrong. You know, you have your 1 second to make a decision and you do something wrong. You have zero support. They can't wait to make a martyr out of you. So what are your thoughts for law enforcement officers that feel this way? And I know we touched on what you want to do, and that's so huge, but are you hearing this as well when you get a chance to speak with those in the law enforcement community?
I am, yeah. I mean, I talk to law enforcement officers all the time, especially when Inslee slapped the vaccine mandate on the state troopers. I know a lot of state troopers that actually walked away from the job.
24 years and 4 months and 2 days. Not far from where Trooper Barbara Werner was sworn into service in 1998, she and a dozen other now ex-troopers returned to the state capitol to demonstrate what the state has lost.
And now when you go up and down the I-5 corridor, you hardly see troopers. And so it's insane with the uptick of crime. And then just in general, accidents not being responded to, massive amounts of speeding, that type of stuff. But yeah, law enforcement officers, whether it's Portland police officers or whether it's now starting to be Vancouver police officers and sheriff's deputies, like they're really feeling the squeeze because these are protectors. They want to go and defend our communities. I'm sure your husband feels that way, but they simply can't. You know, if they do, then they are actually violating the law in a certain extent. So the probable cause thing is huge too. I had some Portland police officers explain to me the other day that a lot of suspects fleeing Portland, they know that the standard for hot pursuit and being able to be apprehended is much higher. Is much higher in Washington, so they will flee over into Clark County, which used to be the opposite. They used to run to Portland because Portland was way more lenient on crime. But now, since these recent bills passed, we have people fleeing the district into Vancouver and then in the battleground, and it's crazy every time. And you've probably noticed this driving back into Brush Prairie. Vancouver has started to look more and more like Portland, parts of it, but it's creeping north. Since they passed this bill not that long ago, I think they passed it just 3 or 4 months ago. We've seen massive amounts of homeless camp, petty crime moving up into battleground and moving up into some of our smaller rural communities. Because, I mean, it's very basic. We pretend like these are new problems, but humans have been living together in cities for quite a while. And without law and order, it kind of falls apart. Like we as a human collective, we know these things. And right now it's just people feel unsafe and it's kind of ridiculous. So, and the police they're the ones that are being blamed for so much of this by the left. So I think it's important that we always stand by our law enforcement officials, do everything we can to support them. That's why I'm so big on supporting those constitutional sheriffs. I do really think we have to look at something that President Trump attempted to do during the height of the Portland riots when he deputized essentially as U.S. Marshals, as federal police officers, members of the Portland Police Department. If these cities are going to have their hands tied, I don't like federal overreach at all. But if it comes down to basic law and order, I think we should look at certain times where we do federalize a lot of these local police officers and we give them the ability to enforce law and order. I mean, I think that's just going to be necessary, you know?
Right. That's where we're at. And that was needed at that time. And it's not over. I think we all know that right now there's a lull in the riots and the protests. It's not over. So it's just all about being smarter for the next time. You probably saw that the Portland police, they recently passed something. Basically, they no longer have a requirement to show up to these protests or riots. They can show up and police these riots and protests, but they're no longer required. Think about what door that opens. It's basically go riot, go loot, and the police, I mean, again, I'm married to a police officer in Portland, so I totally get the why behind this because they had 123 consecutive nights of rioting. But at the same time, that's terrifying for business owners, and people are pulling out of Portland left and right. And we're going to see that in Vancouver if it's not already happening, we're going to see that soon. And the sad thing is Vancouver has done so much, especially downtown. Yeah. When I lived there, you didn't go down there, but now it is a hub. And so I think your timing with really what your objectives are couldn't be better to preserve Vancouver, Brush Prairie Battleground and bring them back to what they once were.
Yeah, we have such a huge potential. I mean, with all the business that's fleeing California, that's fleeing Portland, especially with our taxes, which Olympia is trying to destroy that tax structure as well, too. But that's a different topic. We have the ability in Vancouver to really benefit from that. Our ports in the 3rd Congressional District, I mean, we can access the interior of the U.S. from the Columbia. We can access the world from the Pacific. We have the ability, I think, to be this great economic powerhouse, really. But the problem is we just have failed leadership at every level that's not putting the needs of the people first. So there's so much potential there that I think we can tap into. But the basic cornerstone of that is law and order. Because like you said, downtown Portland was once thriving. It's not like an economic downturn killed that place. It was 120 nights of consistent anarchy that's making the businesses leave. When I go to downtown Portland now, I have to go down there when I do a hit with Fox News with Tucker. And I'm leaving there at like 5 or 6 at night, and I'm driving through the Pearl District, which was once booming, and it looks, like something out of a movie, because there's just all these homeless people and vagrants that are on the streets, and the businesses aren't open anymore. You can tell the businesses are new, but they're not open, and it's prime,
Yeah.
dinner, happy hour time, and it's just really tragic to see.
It really is. Absolutely. Well, Joe, I want to leave you with just a few thoughts from our anonymous law enforcement officer on
Yeah.
what he thinks should change. And he is saying that we need public awareness. We need factual crime statistics. We need public notices of the prosecuting and district attorney's decisions.
Yes.
Public notice of the sheriff, correction officers, and decisions made at that level. And basically, and I believe something just passed recently where you can no longer post people that have been arrested. There used to be like the Busted magazine, or where that's online. And that is, not only do people go and look at that because it's interesting, but it's also really helpful to know who your neighbors are and what's going on around you. That has been, at least in Oregon, Portland area, you can't do that anymore. They're not allowed to release that information. And so it's just, there's such a lack of accountability. And I know that is something you're very passionate about. I am just curious, what if you could just leave this individual here, this law enforcement officer who's just really on the brink of making a decision, do I still want to do this in this area anymore? What kind of reassurance or words of wisdom can you provide?
Well, I appreciate his service. I mean, our law enforcement officers are heroes protecting our community every day, and I'll do everything I can to fight for them. And those aren't just empty words. I really want to go for the accountability factor, especially when these district attorneys refuse to press charges. If the police go through the danger of arresting people and keeping the community safe, we need the prosecutors to, do their fair share of the load too. I mean, their job is to bring these guys to trial, give them their fair day in court. But we actually need real prosecution. I mean, but if we're going to do that behind closed doors and we're not going to know what these people are actually doing, then that's a major issue. And that's something with oversight that we can definitely look into. I know I'm limited on specifically legally what I can do as an elected congressman, but again, that's where the power of the bully pulpit really comes in. And we need Republicans in this district, because it's so contested, and we're really being besieged by the radical left, to be bold and to make a heck of a lot of noise and to really stand up for the citizens in our community, and especially our protectors. Because if we lose our protectors, like, I understand exactly why he is saying, hey, should I continue to do this job? Why shouldn't I just go to Florida? Why shouldn't I just go to Idaho? Because they're hiring police officers. They're actually respecting their law enforcement. They're hiring them. So I understand the decision that he's having to make. I got a bunch of friends that are leaving the military right now because of the vaccine mandates, and I totally understand that. I would ask him, because I live here and I need him on the front lines for my children and for my community, to hold out a little bit longer. I do think that the left has overplayed their hands, and there's a lot of people who maybe weren't paying attention before, and maybe they even believed some of the compelling stories the left was telling because they have control of the media. But the results on the ground right now, they're not really making sense to a lot of Americans. And I think we are about to see a great reawakening. So what he's doing by pushing out information to the community, I know he has to do it anonymously, but he is actually doing a great public service off duty, as well as he is on duty. But really, this off-duty activism he's taking up by educating people, that's amazing. And I appreciate him being a part of this movement to take our country back.
Awesome, Joe. Thank you so much. I know this is going to mean so much to him, so I really appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And I just want to thank you for your service. And I should have said that up front, so I apologize for that. But thank you for everything that you've done for our country and continue to, because I know putting yourself out there is not easy, and you're putting a target on your back essentially, but that is what we have to do right now. We cannot self-censor any longer. We have to stand up for what is right before it's gone. So thank you very much, Joe. I know you have the votes of all my family and friends that live in the area you are running in. So I see big things for you. I really appreciate you coming on, and thank you for what you do.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And thanks to your husband for keeping Portland safe.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you, Joe. You have a wonderful evening. Thank you guys for tuning in. And don't forget that we have our amazing partner, Mike Lindell with My Pillow, and we have our own code RAM for RAM, and it's upwards of a 60% discount. Don't forget, they are trying to cancel Mike Lindell. Retailers are pulling out every day of contracts to sell his goods. Banks are trying to drop him because they no longer want to be associated with him. Why? Because he's a patriot that stops at nothing to get the truth out there. So please support Mike Lindell, My Pillow, code RAM. Thank you guys. See you next Thursday.
Well, hello, guys. How are you today? I am all fired up of the NFL's choice for their halftime game. Now, full disclosure, I haven't watched the NFL in years. And if we want to pinpoint the exact moment I stopped watching, it was when that loser Kaepernick took a knee and went out on the practice field with those socks that he wore, you know, with the pigs eating bacon or something like that, and suffered no consequences for his behavior, and in fact was encouraged and rewarded for it. So yeah, since then, stopped watching. Now, mind you, I'm not part of the cancel culture bullshit. If you want to watch the NFL, watch the NFL. None of my concern whatsoever. I simply made a choice for myself. My husband made the choice as well that we weren't going to support an organization that promoted and condoned and encouraged disrespect to the American flag and to police. And so, yeah, that was it. No big deal. It is what it is. We stopped watching. Actually, it was a big deal. I take it back. That was kind of a big deal because we loved watching football. That was our, you know, that was our family thing. Sundays were all about tons of food. You know, everybody's Sunday routine that watches football. I think we probably all do kind of the same things. You know, you cook all the food for the day. People come over and you burn your jerseys, and it's, you know, it's just a fun family day. So that was disappointing, actually, for us to stop doing that. It was great fun. And they ruined it for us. So, and you know, I applaud you if you were able to look past that and still be okay with everything and keep watching. I say good for you. I couldn't do it. Can't do it, won't do it, and what a shame. So anyhow, so there's your backstory. So anyhow, so today I look at the news and I see who Goodell and the NFL has chosen for their halftime show. You son of a bitches. So they picked Snoop Dogg. Snoop Dogg. Yeah. So just let me give you a little look at some of the lyrics to a Snoop Dogg song. All you N-words out there, take your guns that you're using to shoot each other and start shooting these bitch ass motherfucking police. That'll impress a motherfucking N-word like me. Yeah, but you know, so you get the idea. You get the idea of what Snoop Dogg's all about. By the way, he is a multiple time arrested guy. I don't know if he's a felon. Is he a felon? I guess he, I don't know. Did he ever do jail time? I don't really know. I guess I'll have to look that up. But anyhow, multiple arrests for guns and drugs. And obviously that's like his whole thing. That's his whole shtick, his drug use and, you know, all of that nonsense. So, I mean, makes perfect sense that he would be the NFL's choice for a halftime performer, right? I mean, it really does. It actually totally makes sense. It fits right in line. It's, you know, it's the National Felon League. It's not the National Football League. It's the National Felon League. You know, when they have players who are wife beaters and animal abusers and just all around really shitty human beings who still play for them, it's really no wonder. So there's no surprise here. I'm not complaining out of shock value. There is no shock value here. There is just this overwhelming like belief but disbelief. This is really what you're all about. Wow. Wow. It's still mind-blowing. It's unsurprising given the history, given what we know, but it's still mind-blowing. It really is. Yeah, and mind you, this news comes out within days. Let me see. Does it say how many days? Well, we'll just say within days of 2 more police officers, New York City police officers, dying by gun violence. Wilbert Mora and Jason Rivera. Jason Rivera was 22 years old, and Wilbert Mora was 27. They were responding to a domestic violence call in East Harlem, and they both were shot and killed. And a day or two later, NFL announces this, and I think with a commercial too, with Snoop Dogg in a Corona ad. Yeah, I think I've seen that ad. I don't watch a lot of TV, so I'm not really positive if I saw that or not. I feel like I did. So it's a Corona ad with Snoop Dogg, the violent anti-police, pro-crime, pretty vulgar guy, as their headliner for the Super Bowl halftime show. I mean, if this organization could get any more classless and vile, I would be shocked. That would shock me, because I think they've gone pretty low. They've stooped really, really low. You're scraping the bottom of the barrel right now. So, I mean, what is after the bottom of the barrel? I don't even know. I am, I said I'm not going to judge anybody who keeps watching the NFL. God, what the hell are you watching that garbage for? Really? Like, why? Because there's no other game in town. I know, I get it. There's nothing else, is there? Yeah, obviously, I don't really think a boycott would do anything. They apparently have enough viewers to keep going, enough people to buy their merchandise and do all that stuff. I think they did take a something of a hit with all of this, but obviously not nearly enough to change anything. I think for as long as Goodell is running the show there, he will continue to bring the NFL to the lowest of low standards. And I'm just looking at a picture. I'm going to show it to you here. I can't even stand the sight of the guy. Does that mean? I don't know. I don't really care. Yeah. Yeah, just a little more of the charming and really thought-provoking lyrics from Snoop Dogg. Snitches, snitches, snitches. N-word. Be running, they mouth, just like bitches. Snitches, snitches, snitches. I got a slug for y'all motherfucking snitches. It's very poetic, isn't it? It's beautiful. I wish I could write lyrics like that. I mean, how long did it take him to write something like that? Like, did he sit all day and he's like, snitches? What rhymes with snitches? Oh yeah, bitches. That's right. Yeah. Let me write that down. Let's see. Oh, and let's not forget the rest of, is that the rest of that song? Fuck the police, fuck the police. Yeah. I mean, how I'm keeping this calm, cool, collected demeanor, I don't know either. I don't know. What else can you do but laugh at this point? So yeah, great choice by Corona. Great choice by the NFL. That's really choosing a winner right there. And I mean, if I had to ask anybody anything, if you are of the same mindset with this whole thing as I am, I'm not trying to change any minds. I'm not trying to influence anyone. I'm really just speaking right now to the people who are of the same mindset that I am on this topic. Do me one favor. It's just one favor. Don't watch it out of morbid curiosity, because you're giving them the views. You're giving them what they want, and they anticipate that and they expect that, because nobody watches you more than the people who hate you. You ever hear that? So that's a thing. That is definitely a thing. So I will not be watching. I'm not curious. I am completely uninterested in what type of antics they will do at this halftime show. Yeah, so that would be my request. Don't watch it out of curiosity. I know it feels like it's like watching a traffic accident in slow motion. I get it. We all can't help ourselves but look, but yeah, try not to. Please, 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 please. So let's see. This, by the way, so this article was in the New York Post. That was the one I woke up to this morning, and I couldn't get down to the studio fast enough to discuss this atrocity. Irony of ironies here, as always, because life is just filled with ironies, isn't it? Is that very likely Snoop Dogg will require, and by the way, I hate saying Snoop Dogg. I feel like an idiot just even saying the name, because it's so stupid. Snoop Dogg will probably, most likely, definitely require a police escort. How about that? How about that? Talk about irony. And odds are he'll get it. I mean, I hope the police department, I don't even know where the Super Bowl is being played. I don't know who's playing. Don't know. Don't care. Wherever it's going to be at, I do hope that police department declines and he has to hire private security. Oh, I don't know. He carries a gun himself, doesn't he? He's like, locked and loaded with his Glock. I think I saw that somewhere in his lyrics. So he should be able to take care of himself, right? He doesn't need any protection. Whatever. To summarize my whole thoughts on that, NFL, Goodall, Snoop Dogg, you're all a bunch of disgusting losers, and you can go fuck yourself. So I want to talk about something I found on Humanizing the Badge. If you don't follow Humanizing the Badge, you should. I'm just going to read parts of this here. It says, we want to take a moment to reflect on the aftermath of the NYPD shooting last week and celebrate the hero that is NYPD officer Sumit Sulan. After the suspect shot Jason Rivera and Wilbert Mora, he tried to escape the apartment. 29-year-old Officer Sulan encountered the suspect during the escape attempt, ultimately shooting the suspect and ending the threat. His actions were beyond heroic. Goes on to say, I cannot imagine what Officer Sulan is feeling right now. I want to take a moment and honor this very heroic police officer for doing what he needed to do in the moment. And I cannot fathom everything that had to be going through his mind at that moment, knowing that two of his brothers were shot and he still had to do his job. And just amazing act of heroism on his part. And we thank him, and we send our love and gratitude to him. So I want to talk a little bit more about the two police officers that were murdered this past week, Officer Mora and Officer Rivera. Specifically, I want to share with you the eulogy by Officer Rivera's widow. It is very hard to watch and listen to. She got a standing ovation. Well deserved.
I can't believe I'm standing in front of thousands of people in the cathedral we plan to visit later this year. All of this seems so unreal, like I'm having one of those nightmares that you never thought you'd had. Friday morning, we were together, eating breakfast and drinking some Starbucks. Eating was probably our favorite hobby. Maybe that's why we gained those extra pounds. Friday morning began just like every other morning before work. You were always my big spoon, watching Netflix, YouTube law enforcement shorts, read me your emails, and wait for your mom to come home. You packed your book bag because we had to leave before 2, and really, before 2 sharp, because of your ICO sergeant. You would drive me home and say goodbye with 3 kisses all the time, and texted me when you were 84. That was our routine. At around 15:15, I received a BRB roll call text. And throughout our day, you told me about your jobs till it was EOT. This Friday was different. We had an argument. You know, it's hard being a cop wife sometimes. It's hard being patient when plans were canceled, or we would go days without seeing each other, or when you had to write a report that would take forever because you had to voucher so many things. So you did OT. Or when you had a bad day at work because an EDP drove you nuts. But you always reminded me that it was going to be all right. We were going to get through it. This Friday we were arguing because I didn't want you to use your job phone while we were together. You were so mad that you took your LeBron jersey down, gave me your chain, and put the lotions I gave you for your ashy hands in the bag and said, "Here, take them." We left your apartment, and because I didn't want to continue to argue, I ordered an Uber. You asked me if you are sure that you don't want me to take you home, it might be the last ride I give you. I said no, and that was probably the biggest mistake I ever made. Later that day, I received a call I wish none of you that are sitting here with me will ever receive. I had gotten a notification from the Citizen app, which was my central, and I saw that 2 police officers were shot in Harlem. My heart dropped. I immediately texted you and asked you, "Are you okay? Please tell me you're okay. I know that you're mad right now, but just text me you're okay. At least tell me you're busy." I get no response. We used to share locations on Find My iPhone, and when I check yours, I see that you're at Harlem Hospital. I thought maybe you were sitting on a perp, but still, nothing. I called, and then called again, and then called one more time, and this time I felt something wasn't right. I messaged P.O. David and Joe, because I knew they were your friends from the 3-2, and I get no response. Then I get a call asking if I'm Jason's wife, and then I had to rush to the hospital. Walking up those steps, seeing everybody staring at me was the scariest moment I've experienced. Nobody was telling me anything. Thousands of people were surrounding me, and yet I felt alone. I couldn't believe you left me. Seeing you in a hospital bed, wrapped up in sheets, not hearing you when I was talking to you, broke me. I asked why. I said to you, "Wake up, baby. I'm here." The little bit of hope I had that you would come back to life just to say goodbye or say I love you one more time had left. I was lost. I'm still lost. Today I'm still in this nightmare that I wish I never had, full of rage and anger, hurt and sad, torn. Although I gained thousands of blue brothers and sisters, I'm the loneliest without you. I know you're looking at me and beside me telling me I could do this, and I'm trying. Trust me, I am. But I didn't prepare for this. None of us did. Jason and I met in elementary school, Amistad, all the way up to 8th grade. We had the time of our lives. He was part of the cool kids crew. There was never a dull moment with him around. He was the class clown, got me in trouble a couple of times, had our teachers sit us away from each other because we couldn't focus. And we never thought that our innocent childhood love would lead us to marriage. Even when we said I do, we couldn't believe we said it. October 9th was the happiest day of our lives. I know I drove you crazy saying I love you so many times that you would stop replying I love you more. But you made me feel alive. You make me feel alive. And Jason is so happy right now that all of you are here. Through pain and sorrow, this is exactly how he would have wanted to be remembered. Like a true hero. Or like I used to call him, Big P.O. Rivera. You have the whole nation on gridlock. And although you won't be here anymore, I want you to live through me. The system continues to fail us. We are not safe anymore. Not even the members of the service. I know you were tired of these laws, especially the ones from the new DA. I hope he's watching you speak through me right now. I'm sure all of our blue family is tired too. But I promise, we promise, that your death won't be in vain. I love you to the end of time. We'll take the watch from here.
I feel confident in speaking for a large portion of the family when I reiterate, fuck you, NFL. Really. That's all I've got for today. That's it. We'll see you next time. Day.